The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a steady mechanical buzz that made the cramped IT department feel more like a cage than a workplace. Emma Chen sat hunched over her desk, her fingers moving in practice rhythm across the keyboard, fixing errors that others wouldn't even notice until they exploded into chaos. For 3 years she had kept systems running, patched problems before anyone else knew they existed, and slipped home long after the office had emptied. She was the kind of worker people overlooked, reliable, invisible, always present, but never acknowledged. Her phone buzzed against the desk, the vibration loud in the silence of the corner. Where she worked, the international number lit up the screen, Osaka blinking like a warning. Her heart jumped. Grandma Akko, Emma's chest tightened. She ducked into the supply closet, pressing the phone to her ear, whispering, "Moshi Moshi," as though the syllables themselves could protect her from intrusion. Her grandmother's voice came weak across the Pacific, words tumbling quickly, each one painting a picture Emma dreaded. The cancer had spread. Treatments weren't working. The doctors didn't know how much time remained. Emma pressed her forehead against the cool metal shelving, whispering back in Japanese, her voice breaking as she promised, "I'll find a way to visit soon." She didn't know how she could know his daycare bills were overdue. Her rent notice sat unopened in her purse, and her credit cards carried balances she didn't dare check, but she promised anyway, because promises were all she had left. The supply closet door creaked and Emma spun, her heart hammering. Diane Mercer, her supervisor, filled the doorway, arms crossed, lips curled in satisfaction, eyes glinting behind thick glasses. Emma's stomach dropped. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" "Chen," Diane's voice was sharp-pitched to carry across the office. Emma clutched the phone tighter, whispering, "I'm sorry, Miss Mercer. My grandmother called. She's very sick. You were speaking in foreign code at work during business hours." Diane's voice rose, relishing every syllable. "We have a strict English-only policy at Transcorp. I thought everyone understood that." Emma blinked, stunned. "English-only policy? I've never heard. Don't play dumb with me." Diane's smile was thin, triumphant. "Pack your desk. You're terminated, effective immediately." The words landed like physical blows. Emma's throat closed, her breath stuttering. "Please," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "My grandmother is dying. It was one phone call. 15 minutes. Security will escort you out." Diane turned without waiting for a response, her heels striking the tile like gavel blows. Emma stood frozen in the narrow closet, the walls suddenly pressing in. Her knees trembled as she walked back to her desk, every pair of eyes in the office watching, whispers following her like a poisonous wind. She gathered her few belongings, a battered laptop bag, Noah's daycare forms, the stack of unpaid bills she carried everywhere as if proximity could solve them, and set them into a cardboard box. Minutes later, she stood outside Transcorp's gleaming glass tower, the autumn rain pouring down as if the sky itself judged her. Her thin jacket clung to her skin, the cardboard box sagged against her hip, and her laptop bag felt impossibly heavy. People in designer coats and polished shoes hurried past, their expensive umbrellas shielding them from both rain and pity. No one looked at her. In less than 15 minutes, she had gone from indispensable technician to invisible casualty. Inside, 50 floors above, William Hay stood at the window of the executive conference room. Raindrops slid down the glass in parallel lines, blurring the view of the street below. He had seen it unfold, an employee with dark hair whipping in the wind, clutching a cardboard box while arguing with a guard who treated her like a trespasser. He couldn't hear the words, but he recognized the posture of someone defeated, someone broken by the very system he was supposed to be leading. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching as he forced his hands behind his back. He had built an empire on principles his immigrant parents had died believing, that dignity mattered more than profit, that justice mattered more than expedience. And yet here, in the company he had acquired only weeks ago, he saw injustice bloom like rot in the walls. Down on the sidewalk, Emma pressed herself against a concrete pillar, shielding Noah's medical forms from the rain with her trembling hands. She felt utterly alone. She didn't know that far above, the eyes of the man who controlled everything she had just lost were fixed on her. And she didn't know yet that his anger, quiet, restrained, but absolute, was about to change the course of her life. The rain fell harder, pelting the sidewalk in sharp needles as Emma stood against the cold concrete pillar. The cardboard box grew heavier in her arms, the edges sagging. the ink from old bills beginning to blur and run. Her phone buzzed again, the sound muffled under the roar of the storm. Sunset Daycare flashed across the screen, and her heart lurched. She fumbled to answer, shielding the phone beneath the limp shelter of her jacket. "Ms. Chen," came the worried voice of Noah's caretaker, "your son's fever has spiked 101.2. He needs rest, and someone should bring him to a doctor." Emma closed her eyes, the world tilting. Her little boy, her whole reason for enduring endless overtime, humiliating bosses, and invisible labor, was sick, and she had just lost a job that barely kept them afloat. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I'll be there in 20 minutes, but she knew the truth. In this weather, with buses running late, it would take at least 40-5. Her throat tightened. "He's all I have," she added, almost to herself, when she lowered the phone. The tears she had been fighting broke free. The people rushing past didn't pause. A woman stepped wide, adjusting her designer coat so the fired girl wouldn't brush against her fabric. A man with an expensive umbrella didn't glance at her at all. To them, she was already erased. "Mom, are you all right?" The voice came soft but steady, cutting through the storm. Emma jerked her head up. Standing a step away was a man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, holding a large black umbrella. His dark hair was damp, plastered slightly to his forehead, as though he had hurried out without care for himself. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes met hers, calm, kind, but piercing in a way that unsettled her. "I'm fine," she lied automatically, swiping at her wet cheeks with the back of her hand. "Just having the worst day of my life." The man stepped closer, tilting the umbrella until it shielded both of them. The rain no longer struck her face. "Sometimes storms demand company," he said gently, his tone carrying weight far beyond small talk. "I'm Will, and I couldn't help noticing you looked like you could use shelter for more than just the weather." Something in his voice broke through the walls she had been building all day. Words poured from her lips before she could stop them. The humiliating firing, the accusation of speaking in foreign code, her sick grandmother in Japan, Noah waiting with a fever, the rent she couldn't pay. The story tumbled out, jagged and raw, leaving her exposed in a way that terrified her. She expected the man to nod politely, maybe murmur sympathy before disappearing like everyone else. Instead, Will listened with an intensity that startled her, his brows furrowing at each detail, his jaw tightening when she described Diane's triumph. When she finished, chest heaving, she braced for pity, but he surprised her. "I own a small bookstore about 10 minutes from here," he said quietly. "There's an apartment above it, empty, clean, safe. It's not much, but it's warm, and honestly, I could use someone's help managing the shop." Emma stared at him through the sheets of rain, her pulse thudded in her ears. "Why would you help a complete stranger?" Will's expression flickered, as though memory had brushed against a hidden wound. His eyes darkened with something unspoken. "Because sometimes we all need someone to believe in second chances. And because," he added after a pause, "I have a feeling you're the kind of person this world needs more of." Thunder rumbled overhead, and for the first time since her firing, Emma let herself breathe. The choice wasn't really a choice. Trust this stranger, or spend the night in her car with her feverish child, just for tonight, she whispered, clutching the box tighter. "Of course." Will's smile softened, but in his eyes flickered something she didn't understand. Not calculation, not pity, something deeper, more dangerous. Hope, maybe, or regret. He gestured toward the street where a sleek silver BMW waited, its engine running. As they stepped into the storm together, Emma noticed how he tilted the umbrella more over her than himself, his shoulder already soaked. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the 52nd floor of the tower, nor the phone call that followed. A conversation sharp with whispered urgency, setting in motion a chain of events Emma could never have imagined. By the time Will's car pulled up in front of Sunset Daycare, Emma's nerves had begun to unravel again. The reality of accepting help from a stranger hit her all at once. She unbuckled her seatbelt with trembling hands. "I can wait here," Will offered, sensing her hesitation. His voice was calm, measured, as though he had learned long ago not to startle frightened animals. "No," Emma said quickly, surprising even herself. "Come with me. No one needs to see who's helping us." Her tone carried the fierce protectiveness of a mother who trusted her instincts above all else. Inside, 2-year-old Noah stirred weakly in Miss Patricia's arms, his cheeks flushed, his little body radiating heat. The moment he saw Emma, his tiny arms reached out with desperate urgency. "Mama," he whispered, voice cracking. Emma held him close, feeling his fever burning against her neck. She murmured in both English and Japanese, promising he would be okay. Will stood silently beside them, watching as this broken woman transformed in an instant into a fierce guardian. Every action precise, every word wrapped in love, and something inside him, something he had buried beneath years of corporate armor, shifted. Emma didn't see it, not yet, but upstairs, in an apartment above a bookstore she had never heard of, her life was about to change forever. The bookstore smelled of old paper and polished wood, the kind of scent that whispered of lives lived in ink and silence. Emma stood just inside the threshold, Noah heavy in her arms, her wet shoes squeaking on the hardwood floor. She glanced around in awe. The shelves stretched high toward a tin ceiling, their edges softened by warm yellow lamps that turned the storm outside into little more than a muffled echo. A children's corner sat tucked by the window, scattered with bright rugs and low shelves of picture books. It didn't feel like a store. It felt like someone's memory of safety, while moved with quiet confidence, as though he knew every creak of the floorboards, every book spine by heart. He led her up a narrow staircase. At the back, pausing only to flick on the brass light at the landing, the apartment opened into a small but immaculate space, a double bed made with crisp white linens, a sofa that looked newer than anything Emma had ever owned, a compact kitchen lined with gleaming appliances, French doors open onto a balcony, where raindrops slid down the wrought iron railing like silver threads. Emma set Noah down on the sofa, brushing damp hair from his feverish forehead. He curled instinctively against the cushions, whimpering softly before drifting into restless sleep. Her heart twisted. She lowered herself beside him, fingers still shaking from the day's chaos. "This is too much," she whispered finally, turning to Will. "I can't accept this. You don't even know me." Will raised a hand, not in dismissal, but in quiet reassurance. "You need somewhere safe for your son tonight. I happen to have one. That's all there is to it." Something in his tone made her chest ache. It wasn't charity, it was conviction. Still, doubt gnawed at her. People didn't just hand out apartments and jobs to strangers in the rain. There had to be a catch. As if to prove her suspicion, Will added, "The store could use someone like you. Someone who understands people. If you're willing, I'll pay you a full salary with benefits. Temporary until you find what you really want. Consider it." Breathing room, Emma almost laughed, the sound bitter in her throat. "I'm a tech specialist. I belong in data centers, not behind counters selling romance novels." "Maybe," Will said quietly, "but I've noticed people come here for more than books. They come for company, for dignity, something you seem to know a great deal about." His words unsettled her. How could he, a stranger, speak as though he'd been watching her life unfold? She looked at him sharply, searching for deceit in the quiet planes of his face. But he only adjusted his glasses and crouched to check Noah's breathing, the motion so careful it softened her suspicion. The night stretched long. Noah coughed until dawn, each fit tearing at Emma's nerves. Will had given her the name of a pediatrician, Dr. Sarah Martinez, and the prescription eased the fever by morning. For the first time in weeks, Emma slept without waking to panic about eviction or overdue bills, but peace never lasted. By mid-morning, she found herself drawn to the bookstore's front desk. Will was already downstairs, sleeves rolled up, arranging shipments of novels with the ease of someone who had been doing it for years. He spoke to vendors with clipped authority, adjusted pricing without hesitation, signed invoices with a hand. Too steady, too accustomed to decision-making, Emma's brows furrowed. This was no ordinary bookstore owner. That suspicion sharpened into certainty hours later. She carried Noah upstairs for a nap, then returned to check her laptop for job postings. Her fingers froze when a headline blazed across the screen. Hayes Group acquires Transcorp Industries into $0.8 billion deal. The photo beneath made her blood run cold. A man in an expensive suit shaking hands with Transcorp's board. The same man who had offered her an umbrella in the rain. The same man who had opened his bookstore and apartment to her. The caption read, "William Hayes, CEO of Hayes Group." Her breath stuttered. The room blurred. Well, Hayes, not with a kind stranger, but William Hayes, one of the most powerful men in Seattle. The man who owned the company that had just destroyed her career. The truth rearranged itself around her like broken glass. His perfectly timed appearance outside the tower, the convenient apartment, the doctor's name on his lips, the job offer that solved every problem neatly. He hadn't stumbled upon her humiliation. He had orchestrated something. She didn't know what yet, but every instinct screamed that she was entangled in something far more dangerous than a chance act of kindness. She printed the article, her hands trembling, and waited by the staircase. When Will returned from his vendor call, the paper shook in her grip. "We need to talk," she said, her voice stripped of gratitude, brittle with betrayal. He froze in the doorway. His eyes fell on the photograph in her hands, and his shoulders sagged. For the first time since she'd met him, he didn't look confident or composed. He looked cornered. "You lied to me." Her words cut the silence like a blade. "You're not some bookstore owner. You're the man who bought the company that destroyed my life." Noah's laughter floated from the apartment upstairs. Innocent and fragile, Emma's pulse hammered as she realized whatever this man wanted from her. It was bigger than shelter, bigger than kindness, and she was already too deep to walk away. Emma's voice still echoed in the narrow apartment, brittle with anger. The printed news article trembling in her hand like a weapon. Will stood just inside the doorway, rain still dripping from his shoulders, his expression shifting through layers of exhaustion, guilt, and something that looked dangerously close to desperation. "You watched me humiliated," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. "You saw me fired for speaking Japanese to my dying grandmother, and you said nothing. And then you appear in the rain, with an apartment, with a job, with a doctor, as if you've been pulling strings this whole time. What is this, Will? Some kind of corporate charity experiment?" Will flinched at her tone, but stepped forward carefully, as though approaching a cornered animal. "It wasn't like that, Emma. I wasn't supposed to intervene at all. I was at Transcorp for a surprise audit, and I saw what Diane Mercer did to you. I wanted to stop her, God. I wanted to, but I had to understand whether what I suspected was true." Emma's hands shook. "What you suspected? That someone inside my organization was poisoning everything I've built," he said quietly. "When I watched you walk out with that box, drenched and broken, I knew I couldn't stay silent. My parents were Japanese immigrants, Emma. They built their lives and mine while facing the same prejudice you endured. I couldn't let it stand." The raw honesty in his voice made her falter, but only for a moment. She set the article down on the counter, her fury flaring again. "And instead of telling me the truth, you lied. You pretended to be a man who just happened to care. You orchestrated everything. Do you have any idea what it feels like to not know if you can trust the ground you're standing on?" Will rubbed his face with both hands, his composure cracking. "I lied because I knew if you saw me as the CEO, you'd see me as the enemy. And maybe you would have been right. But Emma, I'm not here to manipulate you. I'm here because I need your help. You know the real cost of these policies better than I ever could." Her chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. Part of her wanted to believe him. Part of her wanted to throw him out and bolt the door. But before she could decide, the brass bells downstairs jingled. Will stiffened. His jaw tightened. Footsteps echoed against the hardwood floor, steady, deliberate. Emma's pulse quickened. A man appeared in the doorway, older than Will by several years, his presence filling the space like a shadow. His suit was a sharper gray, his tie immaculate, his pale eyes gleaming with something that was not kindness. "Victor," Will said, his voice flat. Emma froze, instinctively moving closer to Noah's playpen. Victor Hay smiled without warmth. "I wasn't expecting to find you here, little brother, and certainly not in such interesting company." His gaze landed on Emma, roaming over her like she was an asset on a balance sheet. "Emma Chen, isn't it? The terminated technician from Transcorp." He said the words like a diagnosis. Emma's stomach lurched, but she lifted her chin. "Yes." "Fascinating," Victor murmured, slipping off his leather gloves with calculated leisure. "So this is where you've been spending your time, William, playing house with one of our former employees. How sentimental." Will step forward, placing himself between them. "Don't." His voice was a warning. Victor's smile widened, cruel and elegant. "Don't what?" "Point out that you've compromised yourself, that you've let a single mother with a history of insubordination crawl into your life. Do you have any idea how this looks, William? The board will be thrilled when they hear of your little project here." Emma felt her blood run cold. "I haven't filed any complaints," she said quickly. Victor's gaze snapped back to her, sharp as glass. "Yet, terminated employees develop ambitions when they find sympathetic ears. Lawsuits, investigations, whispers in the wrong places, dangerous things, Miss Chen." Emma gathered Noah into her arms, clutching him close. Victor leaned against the doorframe, utterly at ease. Perhaps you should consider your future very carefully. Seattle's employment laws are complex. One misstep, and you might find yourself in a defamation suit you cannot possibly afford. His eyes flicked to Noah, then back to Emma. Children don't thrive when their mothers are drowning in debt. Emma's chest tightened. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Enough, Will snapped, his calm veneer fracturing. Emma's off limits. Victor chuckled, low and cold. Protective, are we? How quaint. But family business is family business, and she's standing in the middle of it. He straightened his tie and turned toward the stairs. We'll talk soon, William. Very soon. As his footsteps faded, the silence left behind was suffocating. Emma clutched Noah tighter, her whole body trembling. What is happening? She whispered. Why does he know me? Why does he care? Will's face was pale, his jaw set. He looked suddenly older, wearier, as if carrying the weight of something he had never shared with anyone. Because, he said finally, Victor was the one overseeing Transcorp's transition. And if what I suspect is true, he's the one who implemented the policies that destroyed your life. Emma's breath caught, her world shifting yet again. She glanced at Noah, then back at Will. For the first time since meeting him, she saw not just the kind man with an umbrella, but a man standing in the shadow of a brother who would do anything to win. And deep in her gut, Emma knew this was only the beginning. Emma had lived through storms before, the kind that knocked the power out in her small apartment, the kind that sent rain flooding through cracks in her old window frames, the kind that left her clutching Noah close while pretending everything would be fine. But nothing compared to the storm that had swept into her life since the day she answered her grandmother's call in that supply closet. To days after Victor's unsettling visit, she sat at the bookstore's back office, surrounded by invoices and inventory sheets. The brass bells out front chimed occasionally, cheerful against the hushed scratch of her pen. For a brief moment, she could almost pretend this was normal life, a job, a safe space for Noah upstairs, while handling the floor with calm efficiency. But the normalcy was thin, a fragile layer stretched over something dark. Her laptop pinged. A new email. The sender address was unfamiliar. TruthSeeker24 at protonmail.com. Her finger hovered over the trackpad, every instinct screaming not to open it. But curiosity and fear -1. The subject line read, what really happened at Transcorp? Her heart pounded as she clicked. The email was short. Ms. Chen, you deserve to know the truth about your termination. The attached documents speak for themselves. Use them wisely, a friend who believes in justice. Emma's hands trembled as she downloaded the attachments. The first document opened on Transcorp letterhead, bearing Victor Hayes' digital signature. Cultural Integration Protocol. Immediate implementation. Her eyes raced across the words. Effective immediately. All verbal communication during work hours must be conducted in English only. This policy applies specifically to employees of Asian and Latino heritage, who may use their native languages to exclude colleagues or share confidential information inappropriately. Her chest tightened, her vision swimming. It was there in black, a white the policy that had cost her everything. The second attachment was worse, a spreadsheet titled Workforce Optimization, Q3 Results. Names scrolled down the page. Maria Gonzalez, terminated for requesting Spanish translation services. David Kim, fired for discussing Korean business practices with partners. Jennifer Nakamura, dismissed for policy violations after speaking Japanese. At lunch, 23 names, 21 of them Asian or Latino. Her hand flew to her mouth. This wasn't just bad policy, it was systemic, calculated, a purge dressed in corporate language. Emma, Will's voice called from the front. She jumped, slamming the laptop shut. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she scrambled to print the files. Pages spilled out of the old laser printer, each one a nail in the coffin of her doubts. When Will appeared in the doorway, she thrust the memo toward him. His eyes scanned the text. Confusion gave way to recognition, then hardened into fury. His voice dropped to a whisper so cold it raised goosebumps on her arms. This came from Victor. There's more. She handed him the spreadsheet. He read it silently, his breathing shallow, until finally he set the papers down with deliberate care, as though afraid they might explode. My parents came here in 1952, he said hoarsely, staring past her at nothing. My father, Hiroshi Hayes, Though he changed it from Hayashi to avoid the stares, my mother, Maiko, they built haze, grew from nothing while people spat at them in the street and called them names I won't repeat. They taught me dignity mattered more than profits. His voice cracked. Victor grew up hearing the same stories. He knows what this means, and he still did this. Emma swallowed hard. Then we have to take this to the authorities, the Department of Labor, the EEOC, someone. We will. His jaw tightened. But first, I need to know how deep this goes. Victor couldn't have done this alone before Emma could respond. Her laptop chimed again. Another email from the same anonymous address. This one carried only a single line. Check your apartment. Someone's been watching. Her stomach dropped. She bolted upstairs, while close behind her. The moment the door swung open, her world collapsed. The apartment had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers dumped onto the floor. Noah's toys scattered like evidence of violence. Her laptop bag lay open. Its contents spilled across the hardwood like entrails. And on the coffee table, placed with deliberate precision, sat the folder of documents she'd hidden under Noah's crib mattress. Beside it lay a single sheet of paper, tapped in bold block letters. Some secrets should stay buried. Take your son and disappear. $50,000 in the kitchen drawer. This is your only warning. Emma's knees buckled. She stumbled to the kitchen, yanking open drawers until she found it. Bundles of crisp $100 bills, bound with bank straps. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. Her throat closed. Nausea climbed at her. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Someone had been inside their sanctuary, watching, planning. She grabbed Noah's diaper bag, stuffing it with clothes, medicine, essentials. Her hands moving with frantic efficiency. Her mind screamed escape. The bus station, a motel, anywhere but here. Noah stirred in his crib, blinking sleepily as she lifted him. It's okay, baby, she whispered, voice breaking. Mama's going to keep you safe. The sound of heavy footsteps on the staircase froze her blood. She turned, clutching Noah tight, her eyes darting for anything that could be a weapon. Emma, Will's voice cut off as he stepped into the wreckage. His face went pale. His eyes darted to the note, the cash, then to Emma's trembling arms around Noah. Her fear boiled over into accusation. Did you do this? His expression shattered, hurt flashing across his features. How can you even ask me that? Because I don't know who to trust anymore. Her voice cracked. Weeks of stress detonating. Someone knew where I hid. Those papers. Someone had keys. Someone knew enough about me to know $50,000 would buy silence. Who else but you? Will raised his hands, palms empty, his voice raw. Emma, I swear on my parents' graves I had nothing to do with this. Then, whoop, her voice shook. His jaw clenched. The name fell from his lips like a curse. Victor. The silence between them throbbed like a wound. Emma looked down at Noah, at the note, at the money that promised safety and destruction in equal measure. She wanted to run, to vanish. But when she looked at Will's face, etched with fury and something else, fear, maybe she realized running wouldn't end it. They were already in the middle of a war. And Victor Hayes wasn't playing games anymore. The glass tower of Hayes Group loomed over Seattle like a monument to power, its steel and mirrored panels catching the bruised morning sky. Emma sat in Will's BMW parked across the street, her pulse thudding so loud she could hear it in her ears. Noah slept fitfully in his car seat behind her, his small hand clutching the corner of his blanket. She reached back to smooth his hair, her own hands trembling as she adjusted the tiny wireless receiver in her lap. Will's voice crackled softly through the earpiece. Emma, can you hear me? Yes. Her throat was dry. Are you sure about this? I don't have a choice, Will whispered. The sound of elevator doors sliding open echoed faintly through the receiver. Victor thinks he's untouchable. Today, he learns otherwise. Emma gripped the receiver as though it were an anchor. The plan was simple in theory, terrifying. In execution, Will would confront Victor in the boardroom. With forensic evidence proving the forged documents, Emma would stay outside, recording every word of the confrontation. If Victor confessed, the evidence would go straight to federal investigators. But nothing about this storm felt predictable. The line hummed as Will entered the boardroom. Then Victor's voice, smooth, mocking, spilled into Emma's ear. William, you sounded urgent. What's this about? Will's tone was clipped, steel under control. The Transcorp situation, the investigation's expanding. I know about the forged signatures, the discriminatory policies. I know you framed me. A pause, then Victor's laugh cold, rich with amusement. Dramatic as ever, little brother. Forged documents, conspiracies, really, papers rustled. Emma pictured was spreading the forensic report across the polished table, his hand steady as he slid the evidence forward. These signatures were tampered with. Metadata shows manipulation. The consultant traced the digital trail. This wasn't my authorization, it was yours. Another silence, longer this time. Emma held her breath. Then Victor's voice dropped, its mask of amusement becoming sharp, almost venomous. You want the truth, William? Fine. Yes, I implemented those policies. Yes, I targeted specific demographics. And yes, I made sure your name was on every authorization. Emma gasped, her heart hammering. There it was, the confession. She pressed the receiver tighter, praying the recording app was catching every syllable. Wyatt Will's voice was raw now, stripped bare. Because you're weak, Victor snapped. Our parents built Hayes Group with strength, not your bleeding heart lectures. Diversity doesn't make money, efficiency does. Every employee I cut was dead weight. And every time you coddle people like Emma Chen, you prove you're not fit to lead this company. Emma flinched at the sound of her name, bow rising in her throat. You destroy lives, Will whispered. I optimize profits, Victor retorted. And when the investigation lands, you'll be the one buried under the rubble. The evidence already points to you. The board will see a CEO compromised by his little affair with a terminated employee. Congratulations, William, you just confessed to everything. The line went dead. Emma sat frozen in the car, the city moving obliviously around her. She had the recording, but Victor's words made her blood run cold. He had anticipated this. He had evidence prepared, lies woven into truth so tightly it would be impossible to separate. Hours later, she found herself in the observation gallery of the Hayes Group boardroom. Noah asleep in her arms, while the most powerful people in the company assembled below. The mahogany table gleamed under recessed lights, every chair filled by directors in sharp suits. Their faces unreadable. Victor stood at the head of the table, already in control. His presentation flashed on the wall screen, slides lined with polished graphs and damning bullet points. Before we begin, he said, voice smooth as silk, we must address a grave concern about William's leadership. Emma's stomach twisted as photographs filled the screen. Grainy shots of her and Will in the bookstore, drinking coffee together. Noah playing on the rug while Will knelt beside him. The images turned her sanctuary into evidence. For weeks, Victor continued, our CEO has engaged in an inappropriate relationship with Ms. Emma Chen, a terminated Transcorp employee. This relationship compromised his judgment, leading him to manipulate her into withholding complaints of discrimination. At the same time, he personally authorized policies now under federal review. Board members murmured, shifting in their seats. Will stood, his face pale, his voice hoarse but resolute. Those documents are forgeries. Victor implemented the policies behind my back. He's framing me. Victor's lips curved in triumph. Are they forgeries? He lifted a leather folder, pulling out papers with William's signature replicated flawlessly. Or is that just the story you've concocted after being caught? He gestured, and the screen changed again, showing digital logs, timestamps, IP addresses, records implicating Will's personal computer. Emma's stomach dropped. It was meticulous, perfect. Victor hadn't just forged signatures, he had fabricated an entire digital trail. Board member Margaret Walsh frowned. William, these are serious allegations. They're lies. Will's voice cracked with fury. Victor manipulated the evidence. He's the one under investigation for discrimination, not me. Then why? Victor pressed, his voice calm, deliberate. Did you begin a relationship with Ms. Chen instead of referring her to legal counsel? Why did you hide her away? Because you knew she was evidence against you. The trap snapped shut. Emma wanted to scream, to stand and shout the truth, to play the recording right there. But fear glued her to her seat. The board was already nodding, murmuring, shifting toward consensus. Within the hour, they voted temporary suspension of William Hayes pending full investigation. Victor Hayes appointed interim CEO. Security escorted Will from the room, his shoulders heavy, his face stricken. But when he passed beneath the gallery, he glanced up at Emma. His expression was hollow with defeat, but his eyes burned with something else, a promise. This wasn't over. As the board dispersed, Victor checked his phone. A message waited, recording. Complete. Thank you for the confession for the first time that morning. Victor's smirk faltered. The hunter didn't realize it yet, but someone had just shifted the game. Seattle's winter sun broke weakly through gray clouds, its pale light spilling across the city like a secret withheld. 3 days had passed since Will's suspension. 3 days of silence from his boardroom, 3 days of Victor consolidating his grip on the company with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a predator. To the world outside, the Hayes Group appeared stable, unshaken by scandal. Inside, rot spread like wildfire. Emma hadn't slept. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Will's pale face as security escorted him out, his mouth silent, but his eyes whispering, "This isn't over." She had clutched Noah tighter that night, rocking him to sleep in the bookstore apartment, wondering if she was a fool for staying, if she was dragging her son into a war he could never understand. On the 4th day, a cryptic text came. Cafe. Luna, to PM come alone. We have friends. Emma nearly deleted it, suspicion gnawing at her. But something in the phrasing "we have friends" drew her like a compass. So she bundled Noah into his stroller and walked the rainy streets, until the small corner cafe came into view, its windows fogged, the scent of roasted coffee seeping into the drizzle. Inside, Will sat in the corner, his suit jacket rumpled, his eyes shadowed but still burning with quiet fire. Across from him was an elegant Japanese-American woman in her 50s, posture impeccable, eyes sharp behind silver glasses. Beside her, a man Emma recognized immediately from her old office Marcus. Chen, Transcorp's nervous CFO, his tie crooked, his gaze darting. "Emma," Will said, standing as though she were the missing piece. "This is Melissa Tanaka. She was my mother's closest friend. She's also the best employment discrimination attorney in Seattle. And this," he gestured to Marcus, "is the man who's been sending you those emails." Emma froze. "You're truth seeker?" Marcus nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing. 8 years as CFO. I've watched too much corruption buried under quarterly reports. When I saw what Victor was doing, systematic terminations, targeting minorities, I started documenting emails, financial transfers, even recordings of closed-door meetings. He slid a tablet across the table. "It's all here." Emma's fingers hovered above the screen. Pages of damning emails opened with a swipe. Victor authorizing cultural integration, approving strategic optimization. Then spreadsheets showing payroll savings funneled into offshore accounts. Melissa's voice was calm, but lethal. "Victor Hayes isn't just guilty of discrimination. He's guilty of financial fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. But to make the case bulletproof, we need victims to testify. Emma, you're the strongest among them. If you stand, others will follow." Emma's throat tightened. She thought of Maria Gonzalez, of David Kim, of Jennifer Nakamura, faces in that spreadsheet, names erased from careers. She thought of Noah's fevered whisper, "Mama." She thought of her grandmother's frail voice across the ocean. "I'll testify," she said, her voice steady, "but only if this doesn't stop at me. Only if every one of them gets justice." Will's hand brushed hers lightly, his expression softening with something more than gratitude. "You'll have it, I promise." The weeks that followed were a blur of hidden meetings, sworn statements, and sealed boxes of evidence. Melissa moved with surgical precision, building the case layer by layer, weaving Marcus's financial proof with Emma's recording of Victor's confession. Former employees came forward, 17 in total, each one bearing scars of policies designed to break them. Victor remained confident, striding through Hayes Group's halls like a king untouchable, his interim CEO badge gleaming. But beneath his arrogance, cracks began to show. Anonymous leaks reached the press, rumors spread, investors whispered. Then came the federal raid. Agents swarmed the Hayes Tower, seizing servers, confiscating files, escorting startled executives into conference rooms. Victor's mask cracked in public for the first time, his shouted denials caught on a dozen cameras. His name, once synonymous with power, now trended across headlines alongside words like fraud, discrimination, and embezzlement. By spring, the verdict was inescapable. Victor Hayes sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His empire of lies collapsed in weeks. The Hayes Group board stripped him of every title, every asset, every claim, and William Hayes was reinstated, this time with Emma at his side. Emma stood months later in the gleaming corridor of Transcorp's newly christened headquarters. The nameplate on her door still startled her. Emma Chen, Director of Technology and Inclusion. Her team diverse, vibrant, alive with building software to prevent discriminatory practices from ever embedding themselves in Corporate systems again. Will appeared in her doorway, holding the coffees. Hard at work, Director Chen, always, she said, accepting the cup, her smile soft. How was the board meeting? Productive. Employee satisfaction up 30%. Complaints down to 0. Turns out dignity is actually profitable. His grin was boyish, but his eyes still carried the shadows of war. Emma studied him for a moment. They had been through fire together, humiliation, betrayal, danger, and what had emerged wasn't just survival. It was trust. It was something stronger than either of them had dared imagine. Later that evening, the bookstore reopened not as pages and stories, but as the Hayes Community Cultural Center. Families filled the room. Children laughed on bright rugs. Immigrant parents signed up for English classes and small business workshops. A ribbon stretched across the door, and Seattle's mayor cut it with ceremonial scissors, calling it a place of inclusion, of second chances, of healing. Emma stood at the edge of the crowd, Noah clapping excitedly at her side. A hand slipped into hers, warm, steady. Well, lean close. They're all here because of you. She shook her head. Because of us. Because of everyone who refused to stay silent. But Will wasn't finished. His expression grew intent, his hand trembling just slightly as he reached into his jacket. He dropped to one knee, the room falling into a hush. In his palm gleamed a simple platinum ring. Emma, he said, his voice breaking. My parents built Hayes Group on the belief that diversity is strength. You reminded me of that when I'd almost forgotten. You fought not just for yourself, but for everyone who was silenced. You taught me what real leadership is, what family is. I love you. I love Noah. Will you marry me and help me build the legacy our families dreamed of? Emma's breath caught around her, faces blurred. She saw only Will, his hands shaking, his eyes wide with hope. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, through tears, yes. The crowd erupted in cheers. Noah clapped his little hands, his newest word ringing clear, Papa. And then, as if the universe wanted one last reveal, the crowd parted. A small figure emerged, Grandma Ako, her frail frame steadied by Dr. Martinez. The experimental treatment in Japan had worked. She was alive, strong enough to travel, her sharp eyes taking in everything. Grandma, Emma gasped. Rushing forward, Ako embraced her tightly, whispering in Japanese, your parents would be proud. You've built something from your tears. She turned to Will, studied him a long moment, then nodded approvingly. A good man provides shelter in storms he didn't cause. Emma wept. Noah nestled between them, Will's hand steady in hers. And as snow began to fall on the city outside, blanketing Seattle in white, Emma realized the truth. This wasn't an any dot, it was the beginning of a new story, one written in justice, in love, and in the belief that no language, no culture, no voice should ever be silenced again.